I found the box on a Tuesday morning, wedged behind the winter coats in my mother's closet, the same closet I'd avoided touching for 3 years. It was small, wooden, with brass hinges that had tarnished over time. I recognized it immediately. I'd asked about it once when I was young, maybe 10 or 11, and she'd smiled gently, her fingers brushing the lid. "Not yet, sweetheart," she'd said. "When the time is right." The time never came. She passed away 3 years ago, quietly in her sleep. I was 60 and she was 78. We'd lived in the same town my whole life, in the same modest house with its faded blue shutters and the porch swing that creaked in the summer evenings. She'd never married. She'd never talked much about her own childhood, and she'd never opened that box in front of me. Now I was 63, packing up the house to move closer to my daughter, and the box was in my hands. I sat on the edge of her bed, the one with the patchwork quilt she'd made by hand, and I stared at the brass latch. My fingers hesitated. Part of me wondered if some things were meant to stay hidden, but another part of me, the part that had spent years feeling like I only knew half of her, needed to know. The room smelled faintly of lavender. She used to keep sachets in her dresser drawers. I could still see her folding clothes carefully, her movements slow and deliberate, as if every small task deserved her full attention. I traced the edge of the box with my thumb. The wood was smooth, worn in places where her hands must have held it over the years. How many times she'd sat in this exact spot, reading whatever was inside, and then carefully closing it again. I took a breath and opened the box. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. Inside there were a few folded letters, a small black and white photograph, and a silver locket I'd never seen her wear. The paper was soft, almost fragile, like it had been handled carefully over decades. I lifted the photograph first. It showed a young woman, maybe 18 or 19, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. Her expression was serious, her hands folded in front of her. She looked like my mother, but younger, much younger. The house behind her had a wide front porch and tall windows. It looked like a farmhouse, somewhere rural. There were trees in the background, their branches bare. It must have been autumn or early spring. I turned it over. On the back, in faded ink, it said, Margaret, 1943. Margaret. That was her name. I set the photo down and reached for the top letter. The envelope was yellowed, the handwriting delicate and slanted. My hands shook as I unfolded it. My dearest Margaret, it began. What I read next made my breath catch in a way I hadn't felt in years. The letter was from someone named Elena. The words were tender, almost pleading. She wrote about a mistake, a love that wasn't allowed, a pregnancy that changed everything. She wrote about shame, fear, and a decision that broke her heart. I know what I'm asking of you is more than any sister should bear, the letter said, but I cannot keep her. He will not forgive this. If the family finds out, we will all be ruined. Please, Margaret, please take her. Raise her as your own. I will send what I can, but I cannot stay. I read it again. Then again. Elena. Sister. Her. My hands went cold. I pulled out the second letter. It was dated 5 years later. The handwriting was shakier, weaker. The ink had bled in places, as if tears had fallen on the page while it was being written. Margaret, I'm so sorry. I tried. I tried to be strong enough to come back, to tell her the truth, to give you the life you deserved. But I am not well. The doctors say I don't have much time. Please tell Louise, when she's old enough, that I loved her, that I never stopped thinking of her, that you saved us both. Louise. That was my name. I didn't realize the name at the bottom would shift everything I thought I knew. I sat there, frozen, staring at the letters in my lap. Everything I thought I understood about my mother, about my life, tilted. Margaret wasn't my mother. She was my aunt. My mother, my real mother, was Elena. a woman I'd never met, a woman who gave me away because she had no other choice. I looked at the photograph again, the young woman standing in front of that unfamiliar house. That was Margaret. That was the woman who raised me, who stayed, who never married, who gave up her own life to protect me from a truth she thought would hurt too much. I felt my chest tighten. I thought about all the times I'd asked her about my father. She always said the same thing. "He wasn't a good man, sweetheart, but you are. That's all that matters." I thought about the way she'd looked at me sometimes, like she was carrying something too heavy to share. I thought about the small sacrifices she made, the quiet way she loved me, the way she never asked for anything in return. I remembered the summer I turned 16. I'd wanted to go to art camp in another state, but we didn't have the money. She worked extra shifts at the diner for 3 months straight. Her feet would swell by the end of the night, but she never complained. She just smiled and said, "You're going to do beautiful things, Louise." I went to that camp. I learned to paint, and she never once made me feel like I owed her anything. I also remembered the winter I was 12. I'd gotten sick with pneumonia, and she sat by my bed for 5 days straight. She read to me, brought me soup, pressed cool cloths to my forehead. The doctor had told her I needed rest and warmth, and she made sure I had both. I remembered waking up one night and seeing her asleep in the chair beside my bed, her hand still holding mine. She could have been living her own life. She could have been young and free, but instead, she was there, always there. But even then, something quieter was waiting to surface, something I wasn't ready for. I reached for the locket. It was tarnished, but delicate. I opened it carefully. Inside, there were 2 tiny photographs. One was of me as a baby, wrapped in a blanket. The other was of a woman I didn't recognize, but her eyes looked like mine. Elena. I closed the locket and held it in my palm. It was warm, heavy. I thought about Margaret again, about the choice she made, about the life she gave up. She could have said no. She could have walked away. But she didn't. She took me in. She raised me. She loved me as if I were her own, because to her, I was, and she never told me the truth. I didn't know if that was mercy or fear, maybe both. There was a 3rd letter in the box. I almost didn't see it at first. It was tucked beneath the locket, folded into a tiny square. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was addressed to me. "My dearest Louise," it began. "If you're reading this, then I am gone. I have thought about telling you this truth 1,000 times, every birthday, every Christmas, every time you asked about your father, but I could never find the right words. I was afraid you would feel unwanted, unloved, and that was the one thing I could not bear. You were never unwanted, my darling. You were the most wanted child in the world. Elena wanted you. I wanted you. We both did. But life doesn't always let us have what we want. She made a choice to protect you, and I made a choice to keep you. I have never regretted it, not for one single day. You gave my life meaning. You gave me a reason to wake up every morning. You were my daughter in every way that mattered. I hope you can forgive us both. I hope you can understand, and I hope you know you are loved, always, forever. Your mother, Margaret." I pressed the letter to my chest and let the tears come. The words didn't answer everything, but they softened something deep I'd carried alone. I thought about Elena, about the fear she must have felt, about the impossible choice she faced. She wasn't a villain. She wasn't cruel. She was just a woman who made a mistake and paid for it in ways I would never fully understand. She sent money for 5 years. She tried, and then she was gone. I thought about the father I'd never known, the man who couldn't forgive, the man who would have destroyed the family if he'd known the truth. Elena had protected everyone, including me, by walking away. She'd carried that burden alone until it killed her, and Margaret had stepped in. At 18 years old, she'd taken a baby that wasn't hers and claimed it as her own. She'd faced the whispers, the judgment, the questions. She'd given up her youth, her dreams, her chance at her own family. For me. I thought about Margaret's hands, the way they'd braided my hair when I was young, the way they'd held mine when I cried, the way they'd folded laundry and kneaded bread and turned pages of bedtime stories. Those hands had chosen me. Every single day, I wiped my eyes. I felt something softer, something like gratitude and grief and love. I thought about all the years Margaret had lived with this secret, all the moments she must have wanted to tell me, all the times she chose silence because she thought it would protect me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't ready to know when I was younger. Maybe the truth would have felt like rejection instead of sacrifice. But now, sitting here at 63, holding her letters, I understood. Love doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes it asks us to carry something heavy so someone else doesn't have to. Margaret did that for me. And Elena, my mother, my real mother, did that too, in her own way. I thought about the life Margaret could have had. She'd been pretty. I knew that from the photograph. She'd been young. She could have married, had children of her own, built a different kind of future. But she chose me instead. She chose a life that kept her tied to a small town, to a modest house, to a secret she could never share. I wondered if she'd ever resented it, ever regretted it. But then I thought about the way she used to hum while she cooked dinner, the way she'd smile when I brought home a good report card, the way she'd say, "That's my girl," with so much pride in her voice. No, she hadn't regretted it. I folded the letters carefully and placed them back in the box. I kept the locket in my hand. I decided I would wear it, not because I needed to forgive anyone, there was nothing to forgive, but because I wanted to carry them both with me. Margaret, Elena, two women who loved me in ways I was only now beginning to understand. I stood up slowly and walked to the window. I could almost see her sitting there, her hands folded in her lap, watching the evening settle in. "Thank you," I whispered. I didn't know if she could hear me, but it felt right to say it. I thought about my own daughter, about the way she'd called me last week, asking if I needed help packing, about the way she'd said, "I love you, Mom," before hanging up. I thought about how I'd raised her, not perfectly, but with everything I had, just like Margaret had raised me. Maybe that's what mothers do. We give what we can. We protect what matters. We carry what's too heavy for the ones we love, and sometimes we carry it in silence, because love doesn't always need words. I closed the box and set it on the dresser. I would keep it. I would pass it to my daughter someday, and I would tell her the story. Not because it was a secret that needed to be kept, but because it was a story about love, the kind that doesn't ask for recognition, the kind that simply stays. I walked out of the room and down the hallway, the locket warm against my chest. The house felt lighter, and so did I. Have you ever discovered something that changed how you saw your whole life and realized it was love all along?